Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, Mentally Refined. I'm so happy to have you guys back. So today I just wanted to share a little bit more about my personal story so that you guys can get to know me, but so that I can also teach you yet another lesson that I have. So one of the biggest steps that I took in life was actually deciding to leave my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, and relocating to where I now reside, which is Houston, Texas. Now that process has been and still is a journey, but because I made that decision to make that transition, it's a part of the reason that I am the woman that I am today. And so my journey started when my daughter was kind of young. God dropped something in my spirit where He said that He had something for me, but I would have to leave my comfortable place. And so, of course, I wanted to embrace whatever it was that God had, but my relationship with God back then is nothing like it is now. And so I didn't understand the importance or the power of choosing His will versus choosing my own will. So at the time when He dropped that in my spirit, I actually wanted to go and make strides to move towards Texas, but I ended up in a relationship. And even though I was still planning to move, the relationship got serious, and it got to a point to where I was asked to choose between my relationship or my choice to move. And because my relationship was thriving and it was everything that I thought I wanted, I chose my relationship. Now, I will say to this day, I don't regret that decision, because I made the decision that I felt like I wanted to make at the time, and it still all worked out in the end. So back to the story. So I got in the relationship that lasted for a couple years. That relationship fell apart. And once the relationship fell apart, I didn't immediately jump back into the I'm moving to Texas thing, but it just kind of got dropped in my spirit again. And so it wouldn't leave. It was almost like a haunting. And so I said, okay, God, if this is your will, then you're going to have to make a way. And so I just sat back. I lived my life as I normally would, and I waited for God to show me signs that that is exactly what He wanted me to do. Well, not only did He show me signs, but He started clearing the path for me to make this transition. Now, in the back of my mind, I was secretly hoping that I would get back in this relationship that I was in. But I decided that the only way for me to grow was to actually focus on myself. And so in the midst of focusing on myself, I got a new job. I got enrolled in school, and I was on this path of just like success and greatness. And so while I was working this job, I decided, because the job was kind of a temporary job, I was like, well, I'm gonna work the duration of this term with this job, and then I'm gonna see where it goes. Mind you, God had a plan for everything that He was doing, because the person that I ended up meeting at that job knew someone that lived in Texas, and she connected me with that person, and I ended up meeting that person and getting all the information I needed before I made my transition. Now, I had made a couple of trips out to Texas before I moved, but my first stopping point was Dallas and not Houston. So God said go to Texas, but I didn't really know which city He wanted me to go to. So I was looking at either Dallas or Houston. I knew a lot of people who had been to Dallas, so I ended up just kind of choosing the Dallas route. So now let's backtrack. So God is like, I want you to go. I've made this connection with somebody that I can ask anything I want to know about living in Texas, life in Texas. And then God started dropping more and more nuggets in my spirit. He was like, okay, you're going, but when you go, you can't take this. So at first He told me I couldn't take my car. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? Like, how am I going to get around? I don't have a job. Like, what am I going to do? But because of the way my faith was set up at the time, I knew that if God called for me to do something, that He was going to make a way. And so when He told me, you're not going to take your car, well, mind you, I was financing my car. And so if I give my car back, then that's going to put me in a really bad situation financially. And I've always been someone who tries to make really good financial decisions. So I said, okay, God, your will, not mine. So when I sat down and I started calculating where all my money was going, I realized that I was spending almost the same on my car. That's my car note and car insurance, on top of gas and maintenance, which was about the same as I was paying in rent. And I was like, wow, no wonder I don't ever have any money, because all of it is going to this car. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and give this car back. So I called the car people, told them to come get the car. They came, they picked up the car, and I ended up buying a cash car from a friend of mine. This was the first time I had ever owned a car. It wasn't the newest car, but it didn't matter because it was mine and I owned it. And I was going to be able to take this car to Texas and not have to worry about a car note. So that was the first thing he said couldn't go with me. And then he told me to take a slow look around in my house. He said, because everything in here has got to go. And I was like, wait, okay, God, I'm trusting you. I love you, but not my Sofia Vergara bedroom set. I loved my bedroom set. I loved my bed. I loved all these material things. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? It's going to cost me more to pay to ship everything. And then I don't even know exactly 100% where I'm going. And once I started to break down the details of everything, I'm like, okay, God, I'm still trusting you. And so long story short, I ended up making my transition to Dallas. It was a seamless transition. I had to pay for a car. The guy that I paid to ship my car from Atlanta to Dallas, he told me, he said, put everything in the car that can fit. He said, you can even cover the windows. He said, normally we're not allowed to do that, but I want you to fit everything you can. Just leave the driver's side open. And I said, okay, that's a blessing. He only charged me like a few $100s to ship it, which was another blessing. My job ended right at the same time that my lease was ending. That was another blessing. And I already had arranged my location and everything and where I was going. So that was arranged. And it was just like God was just opening doors specifically for me. Now, at this time, I'm just walking around just giddy because I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm going to a new place. I'm looking forward to, I don't even know what. I just know that it's about to be great. But when I look back on it now, the way that God ordered my steps, I know it was him, because I paid $50 for a flight. Not to mention I flew Southwest, which, as we know, those flights are never $50, even though they say they are. But I flew one way, $50 to Dallas, got there. I knew some people. I got to stay with them, thank God. And I tried to pay them, you know, because I had money saved, not a lot, but I had money saved and I was trying to give them money. They would never accept money from me. In fact, they were constantly pouring into me, and I was like so uncomfortable with this because I'm so used to giving to people that it's hard for me to sometimes receive. And so God was like, I told you I had a place for you, so you have to trust that I'm going to make a way in this place that I've sent you to. And so I share this story because had I left, or had I not left where I was, I would not be here today. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength and a lot of faith to just uproot everything you know, leave everybody you know behind, and move to a place that you know nothing about and you don't really know a whole lot of people. Now, I want to keep going with the story because I don't want to lose track. But I want to say this. There's a difference between being assigned to move and choosing to move. Because when God says, I have a place for you, even if it's not what you have in mind, you have to understand that what God has in mind is going to be 10 times better than what you could even imagine, because God knows what's happening now, but he can also see what's going to happen in the future. So if he pushes you or calls you to make a move, you got to be prepared for what's going to happen when you make that move. Now, speaking of being prepared for what happens when you make that move, that was something that I did not prepare for. So when I got to Dallas, of course, the initial transition was seamless. It was beautiful. But then once all the fairy dust cleared and the honeymoon stage was over, things got real and I started to see the city for what it was. And I didn't like it. And I had never banked on, what if I move and I don't like it? I never once asked myself that, because I was just happy to be walking by faith and trusting God. Now, I told you before how I deviated from the plan, and how that worked out for me. So I ended up deviating back to what Tiffany wanted to do again. And after spending like a year and a half in Dallas, I decided I'm going to give Houston a try, because Houston is really where I wanted to be. I had been to Houston a few times. I love the vibe. I love the city. I love the shopping, everything. And so in the midst of the pandemic, I uprooted and I decided, listen, YOLO, you only get one life and I'm about to live it up. So I uprooted my family once again and we moved from Dallas to Houston. And I ended up getting to Houston, and boy, oh boy, did it get real when I got to Houston. Texas, period, is not for the weak, but Houston was definitely not for the weak. And so I came here. My transition in Houston wasn't as smooth as my transition to Dallas, but I still like the city a lot more. And so I maneuvered through life, got a job, of course, handled everything. And then I realized that I didn't like Houston either. And then I got into this phase of, I just don't like Texas. I just don't like it here. I want to go back home. I miss my family. I miss the people that I'm accustomed to being around. And I want to move. And so I did. I left. I moved to a different state. I didn't go back home, but I moved to a state that was close to home. And it actually worked out in my favor because I had a family emergency. And everybody was telling me, no, just stay here, work it out. But things were just not working out. And I was finding myself in a really dark place living in Texas. And so I decided to once again uproot, transfer my family to this state, which was North Carolina. And North Carolina was beautiful. North Carolina was amazing. I had a wonderful job. The family emergency that I had was handled seamlessly. But then I had time to sit. So living in a big city like Houston, there's always movement. There's always things going on. So I didn't really have a lot of time to sit and think because I was always moving and shaking. But moving into a smaller city, in a smaller state like North Carolina, I had nothing but time. I enjoyed the peacefulness and the quietness that was in North Carolina, but I realized living there why God called me to go to Texas. And so one of the biggest things he revealed to me is why I was so uncomfortable and uneasy when I lived in Texas. It was because he was pushing me to grow. And I never understood that until I left that environment. And once I realized that, I started to do some more work within myself, because I learned that, happiness is not in the place you live, it's in the place that you live within your heart. So it doesn't matter about the location. It's about who you are on the inside and how you feel. That's where true happiness comes from. And also God, of course. And so once I did some deep digging within myself, and I realized, like, I never once struggled when I was in Texas. Like, I was financially blessed despite not really liking the city for a number of different reasons. I was blessed. And ultimately, that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to move to Texas, outside of God saying he had something special for me. I wanted everything that he had for me. And so I told God, I said, okay, I know I've done a lot of back and forth. I said, but if Texas is really the place that you had for me, if you will open that door up for me again, I will run through that door, and I will go back to Texas, Houston specifically, and I will not deviate from this plan again. Now, honestly, I know God can do all things, but I'll be honest, I didn't really know if he was really going to open that door for me. I knew he could if he wanted to, but I kind of doubted he was going to give me a second, third, and fourth chance. And would you believe that he did? He opened that door up almost immediately. And again, my transition back was not as smooth as that first transition from Atlanta to Dallas, but he still allowed me to make my way back to the place that he called me to be in. And here I am today. I'm back. I've been back for over a year. And I'll be honest, a lot of the things that I'm seeing and dealing with is a lot of the things that I felt that made me want to leave before. But my mindset now is very different because I know that I'm here on God's will. I know that maybe I'm just in a transitional season right now, but I'm going to smile through that season. I'm going to grow and learn everything I need to learn in this season because I'm not going to forfeit any blessings that God has for me. Who knows where I would be had I just stayed still, but I can't focus on that. I can only focus on the now. So I share that story because I know a lot of people always talk about, I want to move, I want to do this. If you're afraid to move because you're afraid, you just have fear, don't let fear get in the way, especially if you feel like you're being called to move because God has a special place for you. I promise you, even when you don't know how or why God is calling you to a specific place, you have to trust him and know that whatever he has for you, whatever he removes from you, it's all for your benefit. So, do I regret moving back to Houston? No, I don't. Has this been the hardest transition that I have ever had to make? Absolutely. It has been the hardest. But my attitude is so different. I'm so optimistic. I'm so positive. Things just be falling apart and I'll be like, but God, he gonna put it back together. I know he will. But I know that there are so many people out there struggling with the same thing that I'm struggling with, or who may struggle with the same things in the future. So I wanted to share that story because it's a difference between moving or transitioning because you want to and moving and transitioning because God has called you to. If God has called you to a place, hear me and hear me loud and clear. You will not regret following God ever, no matter what it is. That's it for my story. I hope it blesses someone. Have you ever had to make any transitions from one place to another? I'd love to hear about it. Drop your stories and your comments in the comment section below, and I will continue to make videos like this. If you have any content that you'd like me to share, I'd love to hear it so that I can talk about whatever it is that you want to hear about. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this channel because it really, really helps me out. I love you guys. Be blessed, and until next time, stay mentally refined.